Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It is our Wednesday show, Sam. A monster Wednesday show.
A lot of news broke yesterday.
Lots of news to break down. We'll review Monday Night Football. We have the Shouty Shows. We'll be doing our segment. It's I don't know if we're going to win awards for this, but I think we're at least going to get nominated for Shouty Show segments.
We were invited to apply for podcast awards, so maybe who knows?
The Shouty Shows are going to put us over the top, so that's coming soon. And then we're going to go through our midseason awards. It's such a big show that we couldn't fit a guest in here.
And we've done it perfectly, right? We are Wednesday, so we're midweek between weeks 8 and 9. That's exactly halfway through the season.
Yeah, that's it. We are. Wednesday.
This is the midseason.
Literally
today.
The halfway point. Can't believe it. A couple things in the chat already happening here that we have to respond to. People are asking if Walt has a job because he's in every single chat, right? We don't know. And then secondly, Roundtree got fired and wanted to get someone's reaction on that.
Who?
That's what they're asking.
Oh, Graham Roundtree.
Yeah, man.
He didn't get fired. He was a mutual parting of ways.
Sacked.
He got mutualed out of there.
Daniel O'Keefe said he got sacked.
No. He got mutualed out of there.
I don't know, man.
Reading between the lines or reading the tea leaves or whatever you want to do, I would say it's more likely he walked than he got fired.
All right.
Either way, it was mutual.
I'm just saying, it's Wednesday show. We can talk about anything.
Okay.
On the Wednesday show.
Instead of talking about Munster rugby that nobody understands, why don't you tell people where the mailbag email address is?
You got to email us. It's checkthemic@the33team.com because we do mailbag on Wednesdays, and we're not doing it today. We didn't have enough. We didn't have enough emails to come in.
We had enough.
We had some. We just want more. So hit us up. Checkthemic@the33team.com. And as always, Check the Mic brought to you by PrizePicks. Our friends over at PrizePicks. I will be unveiling my lineup later today. We'll see how we do. We're 5 straight weeks of both of us winning at least once, but you can play along with us. Download the PrizePicks app. Use code CheckTheMic. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. I'll be going through my lineup later today, heading into this weekend. First, let's touch on Monday Night Football. Then we'll get to the news. It wasn't as exciting of a Monday night game, but probably better than I thought. Steelers moved to 6-2.
Yeah, much better than I thought, to be honest. I was expecting the Giants to get absolutely wrecked. That Steelers defensive line, which is really good and was really good in this game, and ultimately probably was the difference. I thought they were going to make that Giants offense completely non-functional. Like, it wouldn't be able to move the ball at all. There would be no drives. It would just be permanent Daniel Jones death march, drive after drive. And actually, they were able to move the ball sometimes. Tyrone Tracy still looks really good in the backfield. They had some plays from the receivers. Later on, as the game progressed, there were some drives that definitely, Daniel Jones contributed to just collapse. But yeah, it was a closer game than I was expecting it to be.
It was a good game. Tyrone Tracy, you mentioned, running the ball really hard. He was outstanding. This was a better throw-for-throw game from Russell Wilson than we saw the previous week. I sat here in particular and said, let's not overreact to an underthrow that bounces 17 times off a corner that George Pickens catches. In this game, we had an absolute dime to Calvin Austin for a touchdown, an even better dime to George Pickens for a 43-yarder down the field. Russ creating some of those big plays. The only real blip, sacked 4 times, and then had that fumble. I don't know if that counted as a sack or if he was beyond. I think he was beyond the line, but forced fumble that kind of let the Giants back into the game. But I thought overall Russ was good, and for the second straight week, my big takeaway is the ceiling of the Steelers' offense is higher. They scored 26 points. It literally easily could have been 40, right? We had a George Pickens toe tap, same foot hit. I thought that was a touchdown. Not gonna lie, I thought tapping the same foot twice counted. It doesn't. But that was a better throw than the George Pickens touchdowns from last week, or the touchdown from last week. That fell incomplete. It was just a field goal game, really. It was 9-9 at one point. But that could have been a touchdown. There's another negated touchdown because of a face mask. The Giants had a negated touchdown. I'm just saying the Steelers' offense in particular, ceiling is raised with Russ at quarterback.
Hugely. It was a weird game because, for the first 3 touchdowns, I think were all disallowed. They were taken off the board. So we had this weird game where it was just trading field goals, even though each team was putting the ball in the end zone and then having it negated either by penalty or, oh, no, you didn't quite get the second foot down. So it was kind of strange in that regard. But, yeah, This, I think, was a different version of Russell Wilson from the previous week, and this version of Russell Wilson makes the Steelers a really dangerous team for everybody. Like, this demonstrated this is the improved ceiling you were talking about. Like we were saying last week, is there a difference between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields? Like in absolute terms, maybe not, but he changes the dynamic of it slightly. Like the emphasis shifts from the run game a little bit to the pass game, and his willingness to attempt some of those deep balls, that changes the ceiling a little bit. Because, you know, if George Pickens at the other end makes something special happen, suddenly you have those bigger explosive plays. This week, though, raised the ceiling from that, where it was like, forget does he get lucky with George Pickens at the other end. Like he was making some impressive plays with his arm deep down the field. Like that changes everything, because now you're talking about, well, okay, they dominated on the ground. Their run game was really good, potentially aided by this. But Russell Wilson was dropping some incredibly good passes with his arm that he hadn't necessarily shown last week, and that Justin Fields certainly hasn't shown so far this season. That makes everything about this offense different.
Yeah, and then you see, I mean, there's a point in this game where it feels like, hey, you're getting Calvin Austin involved. You have Darnell Washington with a 29-yarder. We saw Freiermuth with a big gain last week on Sunday Night Football. He only had 2 catches in this. Najee Harris running like crazy. He's been excellent these last few weeks. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, the Steelers do have a lot of playmakers. And I know me and others are saying, hey, Darius Slayton on the other side, who is a big play threat for the Giants, might be a nice addition to Pittsburgh before the trading deadline. Could they still use another receiver? I think absolutely. But high level, going back to what they did during this offseason, they essentially said, we're going to move on from Kenny Pickett. We're going to take 2 flyers, one on a developmental quarterback in Justin Fields, who's in year 4, and one on Russell Wilson, who 4 years ago, it was that long ago, 4 years ago was considered a top 5 to 8 quarterback in the NFL, hasn't looked anything like that since, but they did it for like a combined $3 million. So they've got the cheapest quarterback room in the NFL with 2 unknowns, and so far they've gotten the best stretch of play from Justin Fields in his career to go 4-2 while he played, and then 2-0 with Russ, getting him, I would say, closer to where he was before, looking better, looking a little crisper. So it's just fascinating, again, from like a team building standpoint, how the Steelers got here, how they divested in the quarterback position essentially, but for the better, sitting here at 6-2, heading into their bye on this Wednesday, exactly halfway through the season.
Yeah. I mean, Russell Wilson, look, it's still really early, right? It's 2 games.
Absolutely.
And this was against the Giants defense, which is not great. So him looking good against the Giants defense is not necessarily a shock or a reflection of what he's going to be going forward. But if he is able to maintain the level that he showed in that game or anything like it, the Steelers, when you couple them with that defense, I mean, that's a very, very good team.
On the other side, I think it's worth mentioning here, I thought Daniel Jones, again, throw for throw early in the game, looked pretty good. Awful interception to end it. Before that, though, strip sacked by TJ Watt. That brought about everyone saying, how can you, in crunch time, leave TJ Watt one-on-one with right tackle Jermaine Illuminor? Well, after the game, head coach Brian Daboll said, wasn't my fault. Wasn't me. I didn't call that play. Now, Daniel Jones admitted it. So what Daboll said was there's a tight end on the left side. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to motion him over. Then we get the double team on TJ Watt. Brian Daboll very specifically said this after the game. Now, again, I don't want to headline read. I don't want to be that guy who just reads the clip and comes to a conclusion, because you could read that and be like, well, Daboll's throwing his QB under the bus. You might still believe that. But Daniel Jones, it was presented to him, and he said, yeah, you're right. I didn't do it. So I don't know what happened with Daniel Jones there. I think he said, I read the coverage out. So he saw something in the coverage that said, I want the tight end on the other side, not away from TJ Watt. And he was staring to his left. He was staring. That's his front side. His blind side now is the right tackle. Don't forget your blind side switches. And so it's just, I don't know, man. Those are like the instinctual plays that are probably missing from Daniel Jones. Like if you were saying what is going to separate Daniel Jones from just a guy that kind of executes an offense versus carrying a team, it's like these types of plays, but he took full blame for that strip sack on TJ Watt.
And the tight end still blocked. I mean, he stayed in to block on the left side. It's not like he wanted him out in the pattern, put him, to exploit a gap somewhere. Like, he just had him on the other side of the line blocking. And it's funny, they have a replay of the whole thing, the sort of sky cam look from just behind the quarterback. The tight end before the snap is like looking to the right, waiting for him to be put in motion, and it doesn't happen. And the ball snaps, and he has to just immediately start blocking to the left. Look, yeah.
That's one of those, sacks are on the QB. I mean, those are the things you don't know until it gets explained later. Like, that literally is on him.
Yeah, and so it's like Brian Daboll is throwing his quarterback onto the bus. On the other hand, the alternative is everyone slams him for an idiotic decision that wasn't made or wasn't his to be made. Like, he made the exact opposite decision of the one people are saying he's an idiot for making, right? So I don't really have a problem. I mean, look, you can say that's part of the gig. His job is to just eat that and carry on. I also don't have a problem with him saying, no, that's not the decision that was made. There was a screw up. Here's what it was. I'm okay with that. Daniel Jones is, like, on a play-by-play basis, Daniel Jones was not terrible in this game. Where he does have problems, though, is that we've said this before, Daniel Jones is an unusual quarterback in terms of making pass protection problems worse. This was one element of it, right? Like, Daniel Jones got sacked because Daniel Jones just forgot or decided not to give himself the chip help that was intended for the best pass rusher on the field. That's a problem. There were also, there was a sequence of back-to-back sacks, I think, earlier in the game where each one of them, Jones could have gotten rid of the ball instead of just, running around a pocket like a pinball until somebody took him to the ground. He's just bad at that. Like, his pocket feel and understanding when and where to get rid of the ball is awful, and that causes a lot of problems. And then the Steelers, their trio of really good pass rushers in this game, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Cameron Hayward, that trio combined for 24 pressures in the game and 4 sacks, 2 each for Highsmith and Watt. And Watt was the guy, other than that last play, getting all the attention, right? He's getting the chip help. He's getting the double teams, which frees up Hayward, frees up Highsmith to be one-on-one, and those guys are winning their one-on-one matchups.
Yeah, outstanding pass rush effort by the Steelers. Nick Herbig wasn't even playing. They'll get him back. And so our friend Greg Rosenthal made a statement, hey, this is the best Steelers team since the COVID year, since the year they were 11-0. And, we said, hey, look, kind of a fake 11-0, right. Which they were. They came back down to earth. But I think that's absolutely true. Best Steelers team we've seen in a while. They hit the bye at 6-2 and, look like they've got some pieces to make a run in the AFC. They're sitting here in first place in the AFC North. From a Giants perspective, I don't know, man. Just you're not seeing growth from that team. There's talks about, hey, do you move on from Daniel Jones to put Drew Lock in there? They're benching Deonte Banks on that side of the ball. A lot going on with the Giants, and most of it is not good.
No, absolutely not.
Other than they've been more competitive. They've been competitive in most games, right? So
yeah, I mean,
whatever that's worth.
On the one hand, they're bad. On the other hand, this was better than I expected it to be in this game. So, relative to expectations, this was a pretty good game for the Giants.
We're going to get to the Shouty Shows in a minute, but first, the key to winning your fantasy league or making the right bets? Well, it's all about having the best data, and that's where PFF Plus comes in. With PFF Plus, you're not just getting surface-level stats, you're getting insights that power winning decisions. So from in-depth fantasy projections to market-beating betting angles, PFF Plus has everything you need to stay ahead. Picture having access to player grades, positional matchup charts, and rankings that give you the upper hand on your competition, all backed by PFF's world-class data. So whether you're making a crucial start-sit decision or choosing a side, make sure you're doing it with the best intel out there. Visit PFF.com, become a member today. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. And as we've always said, we're sitting here in PFF studios. We worked for PFF for over a decade. No one knows the PFF data better than you and I, Sam. So fully endorse and encouraging you to go right now, get your PFF Plus, which does power those winning decisions. All right, man, it is the segment of the week. So, we don't have the IFBs in today. We have this over the speakers. We good with the speakers?
The way we normally do it?
No, because we have them in on Wednesdays. We don't have a guest. We didn't clarify this before the show. Okay. Are we good over the speakers? Perfect.
Here we go.
And then we'll get to all the news. So let's start. Shouty Show time. Let's go.
Good organizations look beyond the results. You wonder, why do you have a head coach that's 26-51? Why are your stars 33, 35, 35, 32? Why are you $72 million over the cap next year, which gives you no hope of fixing it in free agency? Why do you keep whiffing on draft picks like Foskey, Miller, Saldiveri, Penning, Turner? Why do you go out and sign free agents like Chase Young and Willie Gay when you need help at wide receiver in the offensive line? Why? You're the reason why. You're the one. You hired Dennis Allen. You drafted all these bums. You're the one who keeps pissing away Gail Benson's money in the salary cap, so you're $72 million over the cap. You're the one with this stupid protocol where you keep going and restructuring deals and kick the can down the road, and it perpetually puts you in this awful state where you got no money to spend in free agency. You're the one who puts together a staff to go evaluate in the draft, and you keep coming up with Isaiah Foskey in the second-round pick because you like his relative athletic score. I'm sick of it. When is enough enough? You want me to say it again? It's the first thing I said. It's the first note I got. When is enough enough?
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
RAS, just catching strays there.
Just taking one on the side. That was big man.
Not gonna lie, I thought that was about the Jets at first.
Same. Yeah. I was confused when names started firing at the draft picks. I was like, the Jets haven't drafted any of those people.
He said 26-50 something record. That's not the Saints record, is it? They're like over any time period.
I still remain to be convinced that the Saints, like everyone's like, now things are bad. You know, their record's awful. They won 2 straight, look like the best team in the NFL, and have been terrible since. So the wheels are falling off. It's time to blow it up. Everyone's getting fired, blah, blah, blah. And everyone looks, because now is the time you start to look to the future and rebuild and how do we fix this? And they look at the cap space number and they're like, oh no, it's happening again. There's no money to spend. I still remain to be convinced that that is the terminal problem that people think it is, because this is the dynamic every year at this point. This is how the Saints play the cap. I'm not. Nick Wright is taking victory laps. He's like, I've been saying it for years. They're going to be in salary cap hell at some point. It's going to come back to bite. Now is the time, right? I'm not sure that's true. This is how it always looks in October, in November. They then have to go through a purge. Yes, they get rid of players that, you know, maybe in an ideal world they want to keep. Maybe they have to make some deals that in an ideal world they don't want to make. They're going to be cap compliant. They're going to sign people again. It's not.
Yeah, but you don't have the same type of flexibility.
They have it in a different way.
They have to jump through hurdles to become cap compliant, but you lose the flexibility. I'll tell you what the bigger issue is with the Saints is that they've averaged. I said this on the other show. They've averaged under 6 players per draft.
Yeah.
Over the last 4 years.
Right.
And so
their drafts haven't been good recently, which is what helped them.
What we used to always say about the Rams is people would say, the Rams are all in. They're trading everything for Von Miller. But we'd say, yeah, but they're drafting 9 times on day 3.
Right.
And they're finding Ernest Jones in the 3rd round. And they're finding 5th rounders that contribute, right? They're finding players. They're Puka now. They're finding players later in the draft. The Saints have actually had a pretty good hit rate until Isaiah Foskey in the RAS. Until they drafted Brian Brzee and Isaiah Foskey with those first 2 picks a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. They had been really good hit rate-wise. Like if you just evaluate, are they hitting on players in the draft? Really well. They had been really good for a decade, for the last 5 years, no matter which way you slice it. Last couple of years, not as good. But for a while, they were doing it. But they draft less than everyone else. I think that's the problem with the Saints. The 2 things, right? You go all in from a cap perspective, and you also go all in from a draft perspective. I don't think you could do both, right? If you're going to go all in from a cap perspective, draft 12 times, right? Draft 10 times in a year so that you have cheaper players that you can develop and that you can, have better depth on the team. The other part is, I go back to don't evaluate GMs by their QB decisions and everything. Like, what's the biggest difference? Well, Drew Brees retired, right? And look, they had some 7 and 9 years with Drew Brees. They had 3 of them in a row. But they were a 10-win team, 11, 12-win team every year that Drew Brees was there until he wasn't there anymore. Okay, then the rest of the team has to be that much better, and they're not. That was good. That was really good rants. That was really good.
Yeah, top tier rant.
That's impressive.
I just still don't believe that this team is in the salary cap hell that people think it is. Like, they are 60-something million over the cap next year.
You're talking about compliance versus the ability to actually make moves.
I'm talking about still being able to make the moves that they make every single year. They are 60-something million over the cap next year. They can free up half of that by restructuring Derek Carr, right? Like, this is a team, this is what happens. We've talked about, they treat the salary cap as a credit card as opposed to teams that treat it like a debit card. This is simply the way they approach the cap. And yeah, that means they have to make some weird moves at free agency, but they sign players. They don't still run into free agency and go, wow, man, there's no way we can ever sign it. We're done. This is it. We have to cut everybody. We have to restructure everybody just to hit the cap, and then we have to sit here quietly doing nothing in free agency while other people are spending the money. They do all this stuff, and they make their moves like normal. This is par for the course for the Saints. This is not the salary cap man is coming knocking, and now's the time to pay up.
I just think the depth on the team is rough.
Right, but that's not
because of the draft.
I don't think
anything.
It's not a reflection of the salary cap. It's this team is bad right now because a lot of the players that they've selected have not worked out. It's not finally this approach has come back to haunt them. This is just they've missed on a bunch of players recently. Consequently, they don't have good players anymore.
All I know is I take back my apology to the Saints. I apologized to them after 2 weeks when they were averaging 40 points a game. And now I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong apologizing to them. I was right being low on the Saints coming into this year.
Yeah.
Justified.
Okay.
That was a good rant, though. Good job.
Yeah.
All right, what else we got here?
I've come to the conclusion that isn't Aaron Rodgers. It's somebody else in that body. This has all been another bad trick. I've come to the conclusion that if the Jets had traded for Jim Brown in his prime, they would have made him a third down back. They could ruin any player. I didn't think you could ruin Aaron Rodgers. They have. They've turned him into a bum. And these head coaches, they cut to the offensive coordinator. He looked like he was waiting for a bus. They asked the coach at halftime, and his statement just made no sense at all. It's something about continuing and just continue to pound the running game. You couldn't move the ball game on the ground. The Pats, who had given up 190, 170, 150. The Jets had 82 after 3 quarters.
Guy's a pro.
Yeah.
It was like delirious time. That was like when my kids are so tired, they're laughing, they're yelling, they don't know what they're doing. It's like, yeah, he's delirious right now.
Yeah.
He's smiling, he's laughing. Last week it was, Rodgers got to retire. This week, I don't even know if it's Rodgers' fault. It's Fireman Ed. Fireman Ed ruins everybody.
I mean, yeah, we have to repeat that, Rodgers, again, I still don't think he's playing particularly badly. This idea of the Jets have absolutely broken him. Like, he's playing better than you expect a 40-year-old guy coming off an Achilles injury to be playing.
Yeah, and it's also one of his worst seasons, right? Because he's 40.
Right.
Coming off of an Achilles injury.
But it's like you haven't...
They're not getting 2014 Aaron Rodgers.
But, like, they haven't ruined him.
It is kind of funny to me. Like, if you look at every advanced metrics, I think PFF is close. I think EPA is close. Adjusted EPA is close. The only one that's not that close, I think maybe ESPN's QBR. If you close between Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Like, they're close in almost every advanced metric. And one guy's MVP favorite number 1 or 2, and the other guy's like, gotta retire! It's time to retire!
But even if you just looked at, pick any number. We're not looking at a guy who's playing like Will Levis out there, right? Like, Rodgers is not out here as a complete catastrophe. Nothing's working. He looks like a disaster. He can't make a throw. His numbers are like 2 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. Like, we're not witnessing this. Rodgers is playing pretty well. It's just that the Jets aren't winning football games, so New York morons are melting down on the air. That's what's happening.
Yeah, which is fun.
I mean, it's fun, but it's kind of grating.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. I think the bigger issue, Rodgers is 40. He is far more limited than he was before. And in addition to, like, Todd Downing's now calling the plays, right? Replacing Nathaniel Hackett. Hackett is not a great offensive coordinator. I think we knew that. Downing, when certain people around the PFF building a few years ago were putting rankings on offensive coordinators when Downing was calling plays in Tennessee, wasn't great there either.
Yeah.
And then Aaron Rodgers is kind of running his offense no matter who's calling the plays. And that offense, last time Aaron Rodgers was in charge of an offense, also wasn't that good. I think just all of this in totality is adding up to bad on that particular side of the ball. Plus, the defense is way worse than it's been for the last 3 years.
Evidently, it is bad in totality. Institutionally, it's a problem. But remember when Woody Johnson gave the quote that, thinking is overrated, just do, So he didn't think. He fired Robert Saleh. He just did. And everything they've done might have made it worse. That's the real issue, right, is that it was bad. It wasn't working, and your solution to that was to just knee-jerk fire the head coach because what the hell, right? Thinking's overrated. I gotta do something, so let's just fire this guy, right? Okay, but firing that guy put somebody else in charge who might not be any good either. It also took the thing that was pretty good and probably made it worse by taking that guy out of the defensive room day to day, minute to minute. Like he's now focusing on 58 other things instead of just the defense.
He's now on the 6-2 Packers.
Right. Your move to change offense coordinator might not have made it any better because the new guy has a history of being bad at play calling. So all of your thinking's overrated, just do actions might be making it worse. This is why actually thinking is important, right? If I do this move, what are the possible outcomes of this? What is the most likely thing to happen? That's why you think. Thinking isn't overrated. Thinking's actually quite important because knee-jerk idiotic reactions can make it worse. Getting into the spirit of the Shouty Shows.
That was good. They're making us shout.
Yeah.
I love that. But I love, as the bottom, Francesca says, Rodgers isn't Rodgers. I'm happy that they at least grew from 40-year-old quarterback, doesn't look right, and you just say, it's the Cliff! Cliff, 40! Cliff! It's a Cliff. He's just bad. Cliff. It's at least Rodgers isn't Rodgers. He expected 33-year-old Aaron Rodgers, and now it's just the Jets have ruined him. I blame Fireman Ed, as always. All right. We got 2 more of these, I think. Let's go.
The New York Jets of 2024 are one of the colossal failures in sports history. But when you consider the future Hall of Fame quarterback and the trade they make for his longtime best friend and all these young players they have on the roster and they fire the coach because it's going to make them better and it only makes them worse, and everything else, all the words that have been said, all the words that have been written, all the actions that have been taken, all the hype and all the belief that has existed, and what the actual results have been, the Jets of 2024 are one of the greatest, most colossal and embarrassing failures in sports history. And that sticks to all of them. So when people say, does this stick to Rodgers? Yes. It doesn't mean he's not an all-time great. It doesn't mean he's not a Hall of Famer. But it most certainly goes in the permanent record. It goes in the bio. The New York Jets turned over their entire franchise to him, and it got much, much worse. Like embarrassingly worse. What they're doing is embarrassing to watch.
You go through all of Greeny's optimism. You deal with all of that through the spring and the summer for that moment right there in week 8 where he can declare this Jets team that no one's going to remember 10 years from now as the biggest colossal failure in sports history.
Every time I hear Greeny do a monologue, it feels like somebody attempting to create a speech that will go down in history and be remembered. You know what I mean? Like all of Churchill's speeches that everyone remembers and writes down all the Churchill quotes, which is every quote. FDR's speech, all these speeches that everyone remembers. John F. Kennedy, ask not what you blah, all this kind of stuff, right? Those were amazing because they weren't necessarily this will be the moment that everyone remembers. It's just they were so good that that's what happened. This feels like somebody trying to do that every time he's doing it. It's like, guys, I've worked for 5 hours on this. I have it absolutely nailed. This one is airtight. Every word, it's buttoned up. This is the one people are going to remember. This is what my Hall of Fame, like when I go into the Hall of Fame as a contributor, this is what they're going to play. They're going to be saying, what a call. This is like, do you believe in miracles? This is what I've done here. This is my magnum opus.
This is like, yeah, I think you're right. That's really well done, Sam. Good job by you. That might be yours.
Yeah,
that description.
That right there.
Yeah. I could see Green, like the Jets lose at 4 p.m. Greeny's like, I'm out on the 4 p.m. so I got a speech to write.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got to get ready for tomorrow morning. I'm not even going to watch the Chiefs, the
Broncos,
the Chargers, whoever's on. I got to write this thing. I'm not even going to watch Sunday Night Football. We got to button this thing up for Monday morning.
The second that drive failed, he's like, pad and paper. Give me the legal pad. I'm getting to work. Tomorrow mornings is going to get me in the Hall of Fame as a contributor. It's going to be the best speech I've ever written.
I love it. And so people deal with his Jets fandom just to watch this train wreck radio and just gloat in his sadness.
But it's so try hard. Like, it feels contrived, all of it. And it's like
And you're saying that too because he's the host.
Yeah.
Right?
Everybody sit back.
We've all worked
I have a monologue.
We've all worked with a host who might, push aside his hosting duties where he's supposed to be pinball into other people, and he might want to pull the camera into himself a little bit and give his monologue and give his take. We've all worked with someone like that.
Careful now.
But that's what it kind of looks like.
Yeah. I'm
not going to name names.
No.
What else we got? Last one. I think we have one more.
Do we? Are you sure? Oh, there we
I'm
go.
a former offensive lineman. We don't get breaks. We're sitting blocking for you every single play to protect you, okay? And you're going to sit there and going to tap you and ask out of the game? You need to get your conditioning up. I don't know what, I can't even wrap my mind around the fact that you're asking out of a game. You must be grossly out of shape or something else must be going on, but I don't have the luxury as an offensive lineman to tap my helmet to get out of the game. What the hell was that, Rex? I don't understand.
I mean, this actually happened.
It actually happened.
Can you imagine? Like, I've been around this game all my life. All right, literally. I've never seen a quarterback have to tap out of a freak. Are you kidding me? He thinks it's acceptable.
Yeah.
What makes you think this is acceptable, kid? Is it the fact that the GM's making the head coach play you? Maybe that's what makes it acceptable.
Thought for a second a wrestler was going to jump in and start smashing through tables.
Rex has his own intro music. When Rex speaks, he has his music there. That's great.
That's the Warriors music.
And that's going to transition us nicely into the news that Anthony Richardson has been benched.
Yeah. Can I just take a moment though to chuckle at the comedy of Damian Woody, who at his playing weight was 327 pounds and is now more than that, will we say? I mean, he seems to be on the Jeff Schwartz end of the spectrum of people that did not lose weight. When they
don't go
retired.
there, Sam.
I'm just saying that somebody like that harping on a guy's conditioning is kind of funny. It just is,
I mean, you don't have to run around the way he did.
You need to get your conditioning up, says 300-plus pound man sitting in a chair.
Damian Woody and Rex Ryan sum up. I mean, it's not just them. Our producers chose one clip of people criticizing Anthony Richardson. This is pretty consistent across every former player, every former coach. The tap on the helmet by Anthony Richardson to come out on the 3rd and 20 play. You were right. I did not think it was going to be that big of a deal, but from Pat McAfee to Damian Woody to Rex Ryan to Jeff Saturday to everyone else, I don't know. They all are all in on Anthony Richardson should never ask out of a play. And I will just reiterate, if anybody can remember Vic doing this, I swear he did it. And was so exhausted he had to miss a play or two for a handoff or whatever it was. I haven't found it. I didn't sit there and watch every single Vic game from 02 to 07, 06. But there was somewhere in there, I swear he did it. And it made sense, but it made sense to me. I'm like, well, you just ran around for 40 yards. Of course. Like you're that exhausted. Or like he just had to hand it off the next play or whatever. But yeah, the players and coaches are big mad about Anthony
Not just
Richardson.
that, but I mean, there's a pretty. I mean, he appears to have been benched now, right? Like this Monday, they asked Steichen, right, about what the story was, and he was like, "Oh, we're evaluating. Is he going to be the starter? We're evaluating everything," which is unmistakably no, he won't be, but we're not ready to announce that yet. So now he's been benched. So, and I think there's a pretty prevailing line of thought that was a big part of it. The tapping out of the game,
I think that
is a big part of being benched.
I honestly don't believe. What's he, 10 starts into his career? I know we've talked about his completion percentage being historically bad, 44% and all this stuff. I believe this is the biggest part of the benching.
The tapping out thing.
Yes. And again, I don't think it's the only thing. I'm assuming that they're in the building with him all the time. And I think Mitchell Schwartz summed a lot of this up for a while really well in a thread yesterday. But chances are this isn't the only thing that they've seen from Anthony Richardson that suggests maybe they don't want him being the leader of the Colts at this very moment, right? That whatever other stuff has happened off the field maybe culminated in this moment rather than triggered this moment triggering, we got to bench him because he tapped his helmet on a 3rd and 20. So I think there's some of that. I also, like Mike Sando reminds people, like John Elway was benched. Other people have been benched before. It doesn't mean that they're done forever. What?
Micah Parsons had it. So I've seen actually multiple current or former players make essentially the same point. Seth Payne was the first one because Richardson's answer to this question contained the line, "I ain't gonna lie," when he was saying he was tired. Seth Payne first tweeted, "I would suggest lying." Micah Parsons said something very similar in his podcast.
Literally, lie.
Zaire Franklin has just said, he said, "I ain't gonna lie." Lie. And this is the sad thing is that, Anthony Richardson is still extremely young. This just felt naive. Like, that was the bigger thing. If he had tapped out of the game for being tired, having just, remember, thrown off a 300-pound defensive tackle, right, for a sack, turned a really negative play into something okay, taken a hit from a linebacker. If he'd simply been tired, tapped himself out of the game, and then afterwards told people, he felt something in his quad or whatever, he got it looked at, it turned out he was good to go and come back in, nobody would care. Like, if he just lied, right? Yeah. If he had simply lied and said, I thought I felt something pop, and once they looked at it, it turned out I was good to go, and really what he was doing was taking a 30-second breather, there would be no problem whatsoever. The problem was he was naive and told the truth, and everybody had a problem with that.
And that's why the quarterback job is so, it just involves so much, right? We saw for years, I thought Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, like the way they handled the media, they always deflected or took criticism and deflected credit. That's all they did. Hey, you just threw for 5 touchdowns, no picks, 400 yards. Yeah, I got great teammates, got good coaches, playmakers. They caught the ball, they blocked well. Every great quarterback handled the media well. Then I think you always had other guys who handled the media and, they'd misspeak here and there. They'd blame some, pass the blame a little bit, and that doesn't go over well. And then you have this situation like Richardson where all he did was tell the truth.
Right.
Probably made a mistake and told the truth. And then it's like, well, that doesn't go over well because the expectations are so high. But for how you handle everything from on the field to off the field to just leading teammates, leading the locker room, the expectations are high.
Yeah, but I feel like, he obviously screwed up twice. He screwed up, first of all, I think, by wanting out of the game. Like, people have made the point that, like, Mahomes is busy. He can't move, and he's trying to get back in the game. Like, he can't go anywhere on that ankle when he wrecked it in the playoffs, and he's fighting to get himself back on the field even though he can't move, right? Usually, quarterbacks and players generally are on that end of the spectrum where it's like you need to drag them off the field for their own safety and for the fact that it's making the team worse when they're out there playing in that condition. Instead, Richardson is like, I'm not even hurt. I'm just kind of tired after that play. I'm coming out for a play. So that, I think, is probably a pretty big problem, and that's why all of the players, I think, are like, dude, what is this? He then made a second mistake by being honest about it, I think. If he would have been way better lying and trying to act like he didn't do that. But I think so that is in and of itself a problem that he thought that was cool and twice, right? I do think, though, it's also a failing of somebody else that has not prepared him for this idea of, like, you can't tell people that out loud. Like, it's a media training thing as well, somewhere along the line. Like, somebody is screwed up that he is naive enough to think that that's okay and that saying it out loud is okay, right? I can kind of get to the idea that, all right, maybe he would think it's okay to do, but somebody should have prepared him for the idea that it's not okay to say, right? Even if you're going to do it, you can't tell people about it. You have to, that's got to be behind the scenes. Only you know about it, and maybe you or the coach or whatever. You can't be telling the reporters that.
I think that's an interesting point too, and that to me that comes back to because I want to sift through all of the reaction to this.
Right, and is that simply an experience thing? As we said, he's wildly inexperienced at everything.
I think that's a factor.
Or is that somewhere along the line, there should have been a media training portion of this that hasn't happened or hasn't sunk in or whatever. Like, is this just a product if he simply hasn't done this long enough at any level? Or should there have been some sort of formalized training that at some stage covered, hey, here's the things you don't say to the media. All this list, learn this list, never say any of those things.
Don't do this. So I just want to react to some of the reactions, right? Because we get people on both sides. Almost every former player or coach is like, that's unacceptable.
Have you seen anybody say it was okay?
I didn't hear, where did Orlovsky land? He usually lands on the side of the QB.
Didn't see Dano.
Usually lands on the side of the QB, and that it's everyone else's fault but the quarterback when there's bad stats. I know Ben Solak from ESPN was like, "Oh, he played the box score would be completely different."
So I've seen people say that. I haven't seen anybody say specifically the tapping out thing was okay.
Fully acknowledge the stats should have been better the other day. But I would also say forget the tap out part. There is a statistical explanation that would justify benching him as well. I don't think that's why they're doing it.
Right.
But beyond the 44% completions, as we were talking about off air, this is the third straight team now where Joe Flacco has come in for a either highly drafted or highly paid quarterback and made the offense look better. I mentioned a couple weeks ago. It was the Jets too. Like, he came in for Zach Wilson and was it Wilson or Darnold? When he took over for the Jets, made that offense actually look good for a few weeks. When he took, I think it was for Wilson that year. Then they put Wilson back in and it looked worse. He made the Browns look better, than Deshaun Watson. And the Colts offense has absolutely been better with Joe Flacco than with Anthony Richardson. And so, to me, in addition to the tap out, this is the Colts saying we're 4-4 and we kind of want to win this year. And we don't want to wait for his development. It doesn't mean we're giving up on him necessarily. Maybe he can come back in or maybe whatever. But right now, we kind of want to win some games. I think that's a part of it, in addition to, oh, by the way, I don't think the offensive line's that happy that he asked out of a play, and everyone else in the locker room probably echoing what Damian Woody and Rex Ryan and everybody's been saying.
No, I mean, he's definitely been let down by receivers at times, but if you just looked at passing stats, his stats are pretty similar to Bryce Young, who was so catastrophic that they had to sit him down, right? So he's definitely, I mean, obviously with Richardson, you have to add in the rushing factor, which is huge, right? Also offset a little bit by the fact that he's fumbled a bunch of times when he's been running the ball. So it's not nothing but upside, but it is something that Bryce Young doesn't bring to the table. But yeah, like, he's in the area where you would be saying you need to bench him anyway, regardless of the tapping out of the play thing, except for the fact that there's no real point in that. Flacco might make it better, but he's not the future. Like, Richardson is your future. So unless you believe he's actively getting worse by playing these games, which was the case with Bryce Young, right, then I don't see the point or the purpose in benching him. But that's why I think I agree with you. I think the tapping out thing is pretty much why it's happening.
Then we got the other overreaction, Mel Kiper and other people on the Twitter machine and everything being like, it's the NFL. QB development problem. They just can't develop quarterbacks. It's the NFL's fault. An inability to develop quarterbacks. I feel like we've touched on that a lot, but you just got to take like one more step of reasoning when it comes to this thing. It is because there's 32 jobs, and 16 of those 32 you probably don't actually actively want. I mean, it's the reality of the position. No other position in sports is treated like this. I think the only other comparable in sports is superstar NBA players, where I don't know how many there are now, but there's probably 16 to 20, right? Probably like superstar, game-changing NBA players. And if you have a guy that's just a tick below that, he's pretty good, but you're not like, hey, man, we're going to go win the championship with this guy leading the way, or with 2 or 3 of these guys. There's no other position in sports where there's 32 starters and about half of them, the team's like, it's either, we'll give him another year to see if he can improve, or like, we're just done. We're ready to move on. The standards are just so high. The standards are through the roof, including handle the media well, lead the team, elevate your teammates. Forget the stats. Elevate everybody. So that's the problem. Like, go ahead. I challenge everybody to evaluate offensive tackles through the same lens and look at every offensive tackle pick and call a guy that does not land in the top 16 offensive tackles in the NFL, call him a failure and say, well, we got to trade this guy after 2 years. Do that with corners. Do that with edge rushers. Top 16 or bust. Top in reality is top 8 or bust. That's what you're going for at quarterback. That's the problem at quarterback. And then it's like Richardson's the stat I pulled out yesterday, which doesn't sound mind-blowing. He's played back-to-back games 3 times in his career. That's it. He's never played 3 games in a row. Anthony Richardson, 2 years into his career, has never played 3 games in a row, started and finished. He's played back-to-back games 3 times now. That's it. You're supposed to do that 16 times a year. So he's very inexperienced. Like, what would you expect? He's 10 games into his career, or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, I do think there's truth to the idea that the NFL has a quarterback developmental problem. I don't think that it's necessarily indicated by just highlighting some young quarterbacks that haven't made it. Like, that's always happened, right?
Yeah.
Any point in history, you can pick a bunch of quarterbacks that were drafted in the last couple of years that are not good or didn't make it. That doesn't mean we failed them. It just means we got it wrong. Like, the draft is a crapshoot, is a classic tale as old as time. That remains true. There was a guy, Sam Block, tweeted out, Anthony Richardson, 22, bench. Bryce Young, 23, bench. Trey Lance, 24, bench, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Half a dozen more quarterbacks. And then the NFL has a quarterback developmental problem. The first reply to this is Caleb Williams is 22, starter. Jaden Daniels is 23, starter. CJ Stroud, 23, starter. Brock Purdy, 24, starter, et cetera, right? There's just as many, if not more, of these young quarterbacks that have succeeded. It doesn't indicate the problem, right? Quarterbacks will always be hit or miss in the draft. That's just the reality of the position. What indicates the lack of development problem is, okay, if we want to, what is the solution if we want to develop any of these guys, right? How does that actually work? What's the pathway? So we're now benching Anthony Richardson. We've benched Bryce Young. Trey Lance at this point has already been traded away. We've moved on from him. Justin Fields, same thing. Will Levis, this is the first time he's getting sat down. For these guys, particularly the first two, Richardson and Bryce Young, we've sat them down. We're hearing from Mike Sando, quarterbacks used to get benched all the time. John Elway was sat down. He came back. Like, okay, so we've benched these guys. We are not yet ready to write them off, right? We still think somewhere in there in Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young as a franchise quarterback, what's the pathway from here? Because there isn't one. Right now, we're just benching him and hoping that somewhere sitting on the bench for 6 weeks, something will change and he'll be better the next time we put him out there. That's the NFL's development problem, is that once this guy isn't starting, whether or not that happens at the beginning or the end, once he isn't starting, we have no actual mechanism for getting him better.
Yeah, I think part of it is you don't believe that you can develop him on your own team. And so Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith, it's like years later, maybe they find some success, which, by the way, I think might be slightly overblown, but that's a whole different discussion. So why can't the Colts just say, Anthony Richardson, we have him for 3 more years? He might not really be our good starter until middle of next year, but we're gonna roll with Joe Flacco until the wheels fall off of Flacco, and Richardson's just our backup right now. Because we think in this binary world, you're either Jaden Daniels or C.J. Stroud, or Justin Herbert, or you come in and you look great right away, or you don't, and we're done. And from a team perspective, I'm okay with like failing quickly and moving on, but you can also have the guy sit as your backup theoretically and just develop.
But what's really problematic is we are not sure whether the Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers thing is an actually superior method of developing a quarterback, or if they simply had good quarterbacks all along and they just delayed their breakout by sitting them for a couple of years on the sideline. Because if you think that actually that's the way to do it, right? There is you can develop these guys from the sideline. It'll take a couple of years and then they'll be really good, right? If you believe that was true, what the Colts would do now is sit Anthony Richardson for the next 2 years, right? And say, oh, don't worry about it. Like, yeah, we're chewing through this contract, but at the end of that, he gets 1 more year and he'll be Jordan Love, right? If you believe that's what happened, that's what you would do right now. He's so far off right now being really good. It's going to take this season, the next season, and then 2026, Anthony Richardson will be ready to rock, right? The problem is you're not sure that actually works. So what you might just be doing is taking a quarterback and burning his time here on the sideline for no gain whatsoever. And you start him in 2026 and he looks exactly the same as he looked now. And you just wasted everybody's time for 1.5 years. That's the problem, is we don't actually know if the long-term sideline development thing is real.
That the other part of that, as a data-centric person, Sam, you can't trust any data when it comes to quarterbacks. The sample's just never high enough. You can't. There's one Jordan Love example of sitting for 3 years and then getting a start and then looking good as he has, or at least it's the first example since the last time the Packers did it 15 years ago, right? So there's just not enough data. Even like the data nerds who are just leaning on, well, guys who avoid sacks, those are the best guys. That's it. That's the one data point. Mahomes did it. Sack avoidance is now the holy grail. Well, Anthony Richardson was the best sack avoider of that entire draft class, as was Bo Nix in his class. So it's like your whole argument, if that's your argument, is dependent on Bo Nix and Anthony Richardson. And Bo's looking pretty good right now, but he's got to be better than Jaden Daniels, who's awful at that.
Right.
Awful at sack avoidance. There's no one metric. There's no slew of metrics because there's just not enough QBs. There's 1-year wonders who have succeeded. There's 4- and 5-year starters who have succeeded. There's no metrics. There's no data that says do it this way, do it that way. Start them right away. Sit them. Peyton Manning started right away. Carson Palmer and Patrick Mahomes sat. Like there's no data that goes fully in one direction for how to handle these things. Anything else?
NFL really needs the irony. I think is that the NFL needs the thing that they had and shut down.
NFL Europe.
Yeah, and really fascinatingly, I mean, NFL Europe at this point, when the NFL is trying to expand into Europe, London games, Germany games, Ireland game, maybe next year, Madrid game, like the NFL is trying to take over Europe. I do kind of wonder if they had a minor league system already there, right? If NFL Europe had now been a fully entrenched thing for 30 plus years, would that smooth the process to some degree, particularly if instead of, the Barcelona Dragons and the Rhein Fire and all these like fake names, they were actually somehow connected to NFL teams, like the proper minor league system, whatever. They're missing that. They're missing a developmental league. And maybe NFL Europe is too expensive. Maybe it was too expensive. But that produced a lot of good players. You look at the list of guys that came out of NFL Europe, it really helped development of a lot of guys. Kurt Warner is an NFL Europe guy. Jake Delhomme, I think, was an NFL. There was a lot of these guys were NFL Europe players. Maybe NFL Europe.
Theoretically, a Geno Smith, a Sam Darnold, like instead of just sitting on the bench, maybe they would have been developing there.
Exactly. Or any of these guys, once you've decided they can't start NFL games right now, maybe a year or two in NFL Europe or the UFL as it is now. Like I honestly think one of these spring leagues needs to strike a deal with the NFL and actually become a genuine farm system.
You would have to, the branding on that would be amazing, right? Like if Anthony Richardson or Trey Lance went and played in the UFL, everybody would be like, oh, look at these guys, UFL guys. You'd have to completely change and be like, no, this is literally just go get a year or two of experience and then, you might have a chance.
Yeah.
But you need that experience. And there's not enough preseason time to do it right now. And the preseason is just a
fake
mess.
Snaps anyway.
Yeah.
Like it's a different brand of football that helps to try and bridge the gap and give these guys live, genuine reps. I do think that NFL, some kind of developmental league would make sense. And I've seen people suggest that actually, the way all these spring leagues, right? There's a reason they don't do it in the fall because you can't compete with the NFL, right? I do wonder, though, if actually the move is to move it to the fall and have it as a farm system where guys can go down to the UFL, play at the same time. If it turns out they've like flipped the switch and they look amazing, call them up in week 12 instead of having to go. Because one of the problems now is if you send these guys away, and this is probably a bigger problem for non-quarterback positions, but if you send them to the UFL in the spring, they play a whole season's worth of UFL football, and you decide, okay, this guy's good. Now you sign him to the NFL, they got to go straight into another season. Like
the injury risk is
right. The wear and tear on the body for like a 365-day year-round slog of football is brutal.
It is a difficult
If
problem.
you made it during the season and a corresponding year, now you're still only playing one season's worth of football. It's just across two different leagues potentially.
There's no money in it though.
For who though? Isn't there?
People aren't going to watch AAA football. Is the problem.
I mean,
because it all comes back to the money. During a full NFL and college football season, nobody's going to the AAA NFL games, which would be on like Tuesday and Wednesday night.
But like nobody's going anyway. Like if you put it on,
but the spring leagues at least they have no competition. They do pretty well like for a spring football.
There's nobody in the stands though. Like the TV deals are fine. There's nobody at these games. Like, there's a bunch of these games with genuinely empty stadiums. I think if you put it on a Wednesday night and the NFL actually got behind it with some marketing, the thing would survive, which is all it needs to do.
All right, we're going to get to the other news here. A lot of trades and various things going on yesterday. Baltimore Ravens traded for Diontae Johnson from the Carolina Panthers. Reports coming out of Carolina. So it was a 2025 sixth-round pick that Baltimore is also getting with Diontae Johnson. Carolina is just getting a fifth-round pick. So they do the pick swap. Again, NFL teams are really into the pick swaps lately. It used to be like, oh, yeah, Diontae Johnson for a 6 or this guy for a 7. Now the Ravens also get a 6 just to give up a round, essentially, to the Carolina Panthers. And the difference in that round with a good Ravens team and a not-so-good Panthers team is going to be marginal. So it's really Diontae Johnson for almost nothing here.
And they'll get a comp pick if he walks in the offseason, signed somewhere.
Is that true?
Yep.
Is that official?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like Diontae Johnson wore out his welcome really early in Carolina.
Having worn out his welcome in Pittsburgh previously.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the reality is he wants to be paid like a
Why don't defensive tackles wear out their welcome? It's always receivers.
Shy Tuttle hasn't worn out his welcome.
Certainly hasn't. It's not fast enough to leave town.
Not without some motorized transport. I feel like Diontae Johnson wants a big payday somewhere, and the Steelers didn't want to give him that. I don't think Carolina wanted to give him that. I don't know that Baltimore wants to give him that either, but they're willing to take him on until that point and let him bounce in free agency and give them a comp pick. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Ravens. I mean, it's, as
Absolutely.
I said, the draft pick is almost nothing. It actually ends up, I think it fits really nicely as well. Like, they can play Diontae Johnson outside. It means Zay Flowers can be a full-time slot guy instead of spending 2/3 of his time outside where he's not as effective. Now you've got Bateman, who's actually having a career year.
Really good this year.
Bateman looks good, having a career year on the outside. Zay Flowers can move inside. Diontae Johnson can win outside. They can swap over a little bit as well. You've got an elite route runner, which I don't think is necessarily a skill set or a strength of any of the guys on the roster at the moment.
Diontae can run routes.
Yeah, mentioned Nelson Aguilar as well as another guy they've got. But, like, it makes them better. It makes them deeper. And I do think it brings something that they don't have so much on that team.
I like this a lot for the Ravens. Again, the reports coming out of Carolina were that they were trying to shop Johnson weeks ago, asking for a day 2 pick. That's rounds 2 and 3. Clearly didn't get that. And so it is interesting that this is where the market ended up, really low. So good for the Ravens. That does make them better. Carolina, again, at the end of the day, they might move up like 20 spots in the draft to get Diontae Johnson off their hands.
Yeah.
Stefon Diggs out for the season for the Houston Texans, wide receiver, unfortunate. A lot of the hype around the Texans was adding Stefon Diggs to Nico Collins, to Tank Dell, to Dalton Schultz at tight end, and to C.J. Stroud at quarterback. And very rarely did we get to see all of those guys out on the field. I thought Diggs did it. He didn't put up massive numbers, but I thought he did do a nice job. You know, when Nico Collins went out, there were games where it was Stefon Diggs, and that's what Diontae Johnson adds to the Ravens.
Right.
He's going to have games where he has 1 or 2 catches. But the game where he has 8 or 9 and he's the guy that the Ravens go to, that's a ton of value. That's what the Texans lose here now, I think, with having Diggs out for the season, is that flexibility in the certain games where this guy could go off.
The flexibility and the depth, obviously. I mean, the good news for them is at some point they're going to get Nico Collins back. Like, his was just a hamstring injury, severe enough that they shut him down on IR for a few weeks. But they're getting him back. Until that happens, though, like, they're riding with Tank Dell and like John Mechie and, you know, Xavier Hutchinson and that kind of thing. So they suddenly become very thin until they get Nico Collins back. Once they get Nico Collins back, they're basically where they were a year ago. They just don't get the player that they traded for and, you know, tried to add the depth and the extra piece and the versatility. So definitely a blow. It did look, sadly, like that was exactly what was going to happen. Like, relatively non-contact knee injury usually spells torn something and done for the year. So unfortunate for Diggs, unfortunate for the Texans, but not the kind of blow they can't withstand, because it basically just means they're the same team they were a year ago.
The other big news yesterday, Cam Robinson, Jaguars left tackle, traded to the Minnesota Vikings off the back of Christian Darrisaw, the starting left tackle for the Vikings, getting injured and out for the season after last Thursday's game. Cam Robinson now has been a Jag for his entire career, now over to the Vikings to fill that left tackle void.
Yeah, I think that's a good move from Minnesota. I don't think they needed to do something. Like, I think that was the kind of injury that – it's funny that, quarterbacks generally are the only position that's going to move the betting line. I do think that without Darrisaw, they couldn't really survive this season. Like, it's too big a problem, the drop from Darrisaw at left tackle to anybody that they would have been putting out there. So whether it's signing veteran free agent Charles Leno, somebody like that, or this type of move where you trade for Cam Robinson, I think they needed to do something. So I think it's a good move from their perspective. Cam Robinson is solid without being spectacular. It means they don't have to worry about left tackle, which they would have had to every game. That.
I would say I think it's a very good move by the Vikings, because at this point in the season, and you never want your players to get hurt, but like if Darrisaw got hurt 2 weeks later after the trading deadline, you're really screwed. Like you're talking about hoping that DJ Humphries, who's at home recovering from an injury 10 years into his NFL career, could step in and be your left tackle on a playoff caliber team. You don't find starting caliber left tackles or tackles generally at this time of the season. And so to do that for the little pick swap, the conditional pick swap, I thought great move by the Vikings. As you mentioned, Cam Robinson came into the league with a ton of hype.
Yeah.
I mean, he had, I always go back to the first year we graded for PFF college in 2014. He was a true freshman. He had one of the best games I've ever seen for a true freshman against Florida. Made every block, was outstanding. I thought Cam Robinson always had this incredible potential. He's developed into a pretty good pass protector, tends to maul people in the run game when he gets locked on, but he loses a lot of blocks in the run game too. He's just solid. He's a solid starting left tackle at this point in his career, and I think that's a great move by the Vikings to be able to get him in the middle of the season like this.
Yeah.
That's rare.
And from the Jags' perspective, they could afford to move him because they've dealt without him at periods, and they already have a stand-in left tackle that they know is solid. Like Walker Little can come in there, be fine.
He's fine. I mean, it's interesting for the Jags because I don't know Trent Baalke, Doug Peterson. I don't know what the future is in Jacksonville for any of those guys. This is not a, hey, I'm on the hot seat type of move. If you're Trent Baalke, I wonder how much came from the top to think to the future here for the Jags. Yeah.
I just think it's not the same as another team where it's like they trade away their starting left tackle and they have no kind of backup solution for it. And you're like, what? That's kind of strange. They at least have experience and knowledge that they can put in a backup and not have to panic.
All right. So, a lot of movement yesterday, a lot of news throughout the NFL. Again, like that move by the Vikings. All right, let's get to PrizePicks and my lineup for this week. Again, just to review, my lineup has hit 4 out of the last 5 weeks. You had one in there as well as a podcast. If you've been playing along with us here, 5 for 5, at least one of our lineups has hit. I will say I had a little tougher time making my picks here this week. I had a little tougher time this week. Nothing that just stood out like, man, that's it.
Right.
I love it. But I got some fun ones, I think. So the first one is from Thursday Night Football. I'm going Davante Adams more than his half touchdown projection here. So I just think for the Jets right now, panic time, Aaron Rodgers is going to find his buddy. He's going to find his buddy here on Thursday Night Football. So I'm going with the human element of Aaron Rodgers feeding Davante Adams in the red zone Thursday Night Football against the Texans. So my lineup could be done after Thursday, but I'm willing to take our chance here.
At least it can be done after the first play like mine was a couple weeks ago.
The first play on Thursday Night Football was pretty special for you. So Davante Adams, more than his half touchdown projection, more fun coming up here. Jameis Winston.
Jameis.
You got to put Jameis Winston in here. More than a half passing touchdown.
Easy.
Right?
Easy.
More than a half passing touchdown. He's got this. I mean, this is Jameis. Now, I was looking for interception projections as well. I would go more than 1.5 maybe for Jameis. A couple turnover-worthy plays last week that he got away with.
We talked about 0 interceptions last week. I see no problem.
Tough Chargers pass defense, but he's got this. He's got this. More than a half passing touchdown. I mean, he'll have 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, something like that, right? So we'll get this, right? Jameis Winston. And then Josh Allen more than his 238.5 passing yards. So this is kind of like Mahomes, feeling like seeing Mahomes at 226 or whatever last week. I was like, I gotta take this because they're going up against the Dolphins.
Okay.
It's Tua's Dolphins, right? So I think there'll be a little more scoring on both sides of the ball here, and I think Josh Allen will throw the ball enough to go more than his 238.5 projection here.
Okay, I can see that.
So there's the lineup for this week. Again, play along with us over at PrizePicks. Davante Adams, more than a half touchdown. Jameis Winston, more than a half passing touchdown. And Josh Allen, more than 238.5 passing yards. So I didn't go Roma Dunze this week. I didn't pull him back into the mix here.
Even though somehow that worked last week, right?
Yeah.
Even though Caleb Williams had like 30 yards after the third quarter.
Wasn't looking good, but there was a 16-yarder late in the fourth that's why the Roma Dunze projections just felt kind of low, and I've been waiting for him to exceed those. And he has exceeded them, just not maybe at the level that I expected. So I usually go the yards route. I went the touchdown route this week with Davante Adams and with Jameis Winston. So you guys can join as well. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. We're having a lot of fun with our friends over at PrizePicks, and shout out to them generally for sponsoring the entire show here.
Presenting sponsor. Big part of the
friends at PrizePicks.
The Check the Mic rocket ship. That's what we are.
The rocket ship. So you guys can join in on the fun and also help support the show. Check the mic, $50 instantly when you play $5 over at PrizePicks. All right, we've got some midseason awards. We're going to go through our midseason awards. We've got some fun ones at the top, and then we'll get into some more of the traditional awards, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So the fun ones that our producers came up with. The Patrick Mahomes insane throw of the year. Let's go. What you got? What's the best throw of the year so far? We're literally halfway through the season here, Wednesday, between weeks 8 and 9.
There's some good contenders. There's quite a few. Funnily, I think that the best throw of the year remains from the guy that just got benched.
Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson's back shoulder heave, 65 yards in the air to Alec Pierce in perfect stride for an absolute bomb. I think is still the best throw that any quarterback has had this year.
Same throw. Same for me. There's no better throw than that. That's one of the best throws I've ever seen, and it was unbelievable.
Now, other contenders, Josh Allen's ridiculous sideline thing where he launches it back to Khalil Shakir miles down the field despite basically being off the field at the time. That was pretty crazy. Jaden Daniels against the Bengals, 0 blitz to end the game, drops it perfectly to Terry McLaurin.
That would be number 2 for me.
That was really good.
Jaden Daniels. Given the circumstances, knowing he's going to take a hit, that was outstanding. The
absurd Trevor Lawrence anticipation throw to Brian Thomas Jr. in the back of the end zone, where it's like, look where he puts this in the air. Brian Thomas has 4 people to beat and is nowhere near the ball. Doesn't even look like it's on.
He
drops it into a window. That was amazing. A lot of people talked about the Lamar Jackson. You remember he stiff-armed Sam Hubbard in the face twice on the same play?
That counts. The play.
The play was really good. I don't think the throw was as good as these other plays, but that play was amazing. Throw-wise, I don't think that's at the same level. But those would be my other immediate options.
We have the Brett Favre WTF interception of the year.
Yeah. Well, this is just which Will Levis play do you want to roll with? I'm going with Levis 2.0. Which was the fumble? Yeah, where he found that the only way of making it worse was to lateral it backwards. That was an attempted pass.
It's not an interception.
I'm counting it as an interception of the year. It was an attempted pass, and he lateraled it from horizontal, facing the wrong way.
So we have week 1 Will Levis when he shovels it late for a pick 6 that literally lost them the game.
Surrender Cobra Levis.
Yeah, surrender Cobra.
Yeah.
And then you're taking the one where he tried to replicate it the following week.
He found the only ways
and threw it backwards.
Yeah.
And then the one that I have to add that ties Levis is Jordan Love, because he did it from his own end zone.
Yeah.
For a 5-yard walk-in pick 6.
Right. That was
so Jordan Love and Will Levis, for me, tied the Brett Favre honorary interception of the year. Good job by everybody's picking on Jordan Love for honoring Brett Favre. On both ends of the spectrum with touchdowns and interceptions.
It's kind of funny to me that Brett Favre, who is, one of the better quarterbacks to ever play the game, is basically remembered now for boneheaded interceptions.
Yeah, I told you, Brett Favre was just an interception guy.
And legal woes.
And George Foreman was just a grill guy.
Yes.
And Peyton Manning is just a painter.
Yeah.
This is what people know these guys as. That's it. Marshawn Lynch, beast mode run of the year.
Yep. Now, I knew you were going to go with Bucky.
The Bucky Quake.
Yeah.
Bucky Irving sifting through the Saints defense.
Right.
That's it for me.
So I knew you were going to go with Bucky. I therefore had to think about a different run.
I'm just glad that was the first one that came to mind. I didn't have to do any more research.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Dameon Pierce's run against the Patriots.
Yeah, that was solid.
He makes a really nice cut through a tight space, stiff arms 2 separate defenders to the ground, and then outruns multiple other people to the end zone, dives over the goal line. Great run.
Odell Beckham catch of the year. It's the best catch.
So I think the best catch that's been made by any receiver this year didn't even count as a catch. It's the one Jalen Polk made up the sideline where he got absolutely wrecked the second he caught the ball. Somehow held onto it, and they deemed that it didn't quite get everything down in bounds, so it didn't count.
You just
Greatest
break all
catch
the
of
rules.
the season.
Your best interception is a fumble. Your best catch is an incompletion.
Greatest catch of the season. That dude caught the ball, got absolutely blasted in the face by an oncoming truck, held on to it anyway, and they're like, "No, sorry,
Was that
he didn't get
against the
enough down in
Dolphins?
bounds." I don't remember who it was against. Maybe.
I think it was Miami. That was a great catch. Even though it didn't count, that was the only thing Jalen Polk has done well this year.
It is.
The catch of the year for me was an interception. Cam Taylor-Britt. Cam Taylor-Britt doing the OBJ.
That was a great snag.
One-handed catch to intercept Patrick Mahomes after, talking smack all week.
Right.
Against the Chiefs. Backed it up with the interception, even though he got burnt for a touchdown as well.
Alec Pierce has one that's worth a mention as well, a one-handed one down at the sideline. Almost all of Alec Pierce's catches are just like deep bombs down, like way downfield. This is one of the few where it's actually was more of the mid-range, but was a ridiculous one-handed tip it to himself snag. That was really good too.
The last one that the producers came up with here, the Bryce Young, whoa, I gave up too much trade of the year.
I mean, this has to be Hassan Reddick at this point, right? Because he's not yet played.
Has yet to play.
Yeah. So that's a problem.
I have also gone to the Jets well.
Oh.
I'm going to say Devontae Adams. I mean, they brought Devontae in.
Adams?
They're 0-2 since picking him up. All they've gotten out of Devontae Adams is a speech where he said, "Hey, guys, we're better than this."
Yeah.
And
I thought you were going to go with Brian Burns.
Brian Burns has been pretty good.
You're
better
a Brian
than
Burns
expected.
hater.
I am a Burns
you gave
hater.
Up too much.
I am not a Burns hater. I'm just a realist with Brian Burns. He's not a $28 million a year player, but he's been decent. He had that cleanup sack that Dexter Lawrence set up for him the other night.
He did.
That was nice.
Yeah.
I would also say the Bryce Young trade because is still valid because the Bears have one more pick from the Bryce Young trade. So that's the gift that keeps on giving.
The gift that keeps on giving.
All right, we got a couple more categories to go through here. How about the best free agent signing of this offseason?
I think it might be Jonathan Grenard for the Vikings. He's been really good this year. He's been better than I expected him to be, better than I think they would have expected him to be. I don't know,
and he went from good to really good. He was solid to last year had a breakout, really good season with Houston.
They got they sort of voluntarily got younger and cheaper at the position, let Danielle Hunter walk, who then signed with Houston, so they end up swapping essentially. It's not clear so far that they downgraded in any way, and they got younger and cheaper. So I think that makes that the free agent signing of the year.
For me, it's Xavier McKinney, the Packers safety. I mean, the guy, 6 interceptions. I keep citing 6. I think that's the number.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, again, this is Xavier McKinney and Jesse Bates over the last couple of years. Signing safeties to big money is a little risky, especially given the way the safety market has gone. You have guys like Justin Simmons that you're just pulling off the streets who are good players. Off the street, not the streets. Really good players. And so the league's getting cheaper at safety. So when you pay a Jesse Bates, or you pay your Xavier McKinney, it's risky. It's tough to get that return. And I think the Falcons have gotten that return from Bates last year as a free agent signing, and the Packers absolutely have gotten that return from McKinney, who has been a ball magnet, turnover machine, and fits their scheme extremely well as their deep free safety. So love McKinney. I saw you wrote down Derrick Henry. I was going to write down Derrick Henry as well. Henry and Saquon.
Yeah.
The only thing keeping me away from Saquon is it's a 4-year deal. And for the life of a 4-year deal for a running back who's an ancient 27, 28 years old.
I mean, Derrick Henry.
Tough.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, I think in particular. I mean, that's a bargain contract in relative terms for a guy who's still the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line there. It's just a great deal from there.
Who is your coach of the year?
I think it's Matt LaFleur. I can't say enough good things about what he's done. Malik Willis was not on the team before the start of the season. They went and traded for him randomly, and I was like, what the hell is with that? They traded for this guy, dumped their previous backup quarterbacks, and rolled with him as a backup into the season, and every time he's been on the field, he's looked good. Matt LaFleur has made that work, in addition to what he does on a day-to-day basis, having the offense humming anyway. I think he's coach of the year right now.
I completely agree. I would go Matt LaFleur. I think the betting odds have Dan Quinn, and I think LaFleur's like 6th or 7th. And every year this happens, where it's coach of the year is literally just based off of did you exceed expectations.
Right.
And so the Packers came in with expectations too high. They were already good last year. But LaFleur winning 2 games with Malik Willis and then winning a 3rd game with him in relief, I think, puts him to the top. Dan Quinn absolutely deserves a mention because we'll talk later about Jaden Daniels in various points. But Dan Quinn comes into a team where they should have clearly been the 3rd or 4th best team in the division, behind the Cowboys, behind the Eagles. They're sitting here in first place and doing it with a rookie quarterback. How much you want to give credit to Jaden Daniels, to Quinn, but getting that and if that defense starts playing better, like or continuing what they've done the last couple of weeks, man, Dan Quinn deserves to be in that conversation as well. But I would choose Matt LaFleur right now, given the circumstances that they've had.
And I think Mike Tomlin deserves to be in there as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, they got the winning record, a really good record, out of Justin Fields. They then made a quarterback switch. You know, we're talking about how difficult that is to do, to make the quarterback switch and have it not be a problem. And like he just went out and said, no, Justin Fields coming in. It's my decision. This is what we're doing. Or sorry, Russell Wilson's coming in. Russell Wilson plays well, plays even better the next game. Right now, Mike Tomlin looks like a genius.
Yeah, you have to give him that credit. It's what you said. That's why you pay me the big bucks.
Right.
To make this decision, to go from good to great.
Yeah.
And you went from merely good, 4-2, to great, 2-0. Give Tomlin credit for that, absolutely. How about offensive rookie of the year? Offensive rookie of the year.
I mean, this is clearly Jaden Daniels, right?
It is. If we're taking positional value out of it, though, you put Brock Bowers in there too. He's going to break on pace to break rookie tight end records and has been outstanding. Just like last week, we were talking top 5 rookies. It was Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers. Maybe you throw Malik Neighbors' name in there as well. But yeah, I think Daniels wins this award right now.
Yeah.
Bowers just deserves a mention. If Jaden Daniels wasn't doing what he's doing, Bowers has a chance to win that award. Defensive rookie of the year?
I would go with Jared Verse. I think he's been really impressive. Like his power is formidable even in the NFL. And he's cooking.
Same for me, Jared Verse. I don't think there's enough other competition really.
Right.
With guys that have played enough consistently. Give me Jared Verse for the Rams for defensive rookie of the year. I think some guys, we'll see what happens in the second half of the year to maybe challenge him, but I think he's been the best. How about offensive player of the year? This is always a fun one because you're like, it's not really the MVP. Who do you want to highlight here? It gives you a chance to highlight other non-QB positions.
I'm going to go with Derrick Henry. I mean, that guy is still a monster. He's leading the league in rushing. His numbers are insane. He's leading the league in rushing by a pretty healthy margin. He looks as fresh as ever. He looks as fast as ever. He looks as strong as ever. He's still the best running back in the NFL, and he's having one of his better seasons now in this like Madden creative franchise offense with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably Henry. I didn't want to agree with you on everything though, so I looked at receiver and I considered both Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I think Jamar Chase, the fact that the Bengals are only 3-5, people are gonna, not realize how good of a season he's having. I'm gonna say Justin Jefferson though for this because he's done it with Sam Darnold, and it's not a knock on Darnold, but we've seen Justin Jefferson be QB proof through the years. He's done it with Cousins. He did it when they had their backups in last year, and he's done it with Sam Darnold. And creates big plays, elevates the quarterback. He's always open, wins everywhere. Love Justin Jefferson, and I think again expectations maybe are so high for him for how good he's been. You might be sleeping on having another elite season.
Yeah, a couple of people in the chat said Nico Collins was on an insane pace if he hadn't got hurt with his hamstring. That's absolutely true. I mean, Nico Collins could easily have been Offensive Player of the Year if he hadn't wrecked his hamstring.
Yes, please give your answers in the chat. Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year in the chat. Let us know right now. So that's offensive player of the year. Who's your defensive player of the year?
I think there are 3 very strong candidates. Dexter Lawrence, TJ Watt, and then one that isn't coming off the most recent thing we saw, Fred Warner. I think though any of those 3 guys are the 3 strongest candidates for defensive player of the year right now. I would go right now with Fred Warner. I think that guy is changing every game he plays in an insane level for an off-the-ball linebacker. Like, it's so much harder for that position to impact the game directly than it is for a defensive lineman who essentially can get to the quarterback, on pretty much any play. He's got to be in and around the ball, and he doesn't have control over where the ball's going, and he's still doing it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I completely agree on Warner as an option. And for him to win it at the end of the season, you need to have what he has, right? 2 interceptions, 1's a pick 6, 4 forced fumbles. And again, we tend to forget, okay, they're 4-4, and you tend to forget he almost gave them the win against Minnesota, or gave them a chance to win against Minnesota because of an interception and a forced fumble. Had a pick 6 in the Patriots game, but it's like some of that gets lost in the mix. Warner has been outstanding. Dexter Lawrence, completely agreed, like reimagining nose tackles, but really just playing it better than anyone else. I'm going to go TJ Watt as the guy, though.
Oh,
TJ Watt. In a year where he doesn't actually have the most sacks in the NFL, but the timely sacks, as we always know, the forced fumbles, he got screwed probably twice in one game. He had 2 sacks negated, so those don't actually show up to the total. For years, as PFF employees and trusters of the grades, we would say, look, the grades and PFF WAR and a lot of these metrics are the thing that we would lean on rather than the traditional stats. Well, for once, TJ Watt sitting atop the grading and maybe outperforming his raw stats. In addition to, you see him on Monday night and it's like, hey, we need to stop. How about a strip sack? And I'm just going to recover it myself. So TJ Watt's been doing that. And then don't forget, when we're talking about individual plays saving games, forced fumble at the goal line against the Raiders a few weeks ago. How are the Steelers 6-2? Well, TJ Watt is a huge part of that. Always has been, but I feel like even more this year. Run game, big plays, and pass rushing, big plays from TJ Watt.
Fewer sacks this season than Will McDonald. In case you ever wondered, like, how much can the sack numbers lie?
Yeah, and so I'm just Steelers fans. If you're true to form, that's the stat you always want to rely on.
Unfortunately for you guys, Will McDonald is now defensive player of the year.
You have to vote for Will McDonald for defensive player of the year. Who, by the way, I don't think is anywhere close to defensive player of the year.
No, if that wasn't obvious. Like, the point was, like, for the first time in a while, TJ Watt's on the other side of that, where he has fewer sacks than somebody else, but is dramatically outplaying them.
He still has the other fun stuff, the forced fumbles, the fumble recoveries. He still has all that up there as well. But I'm doing it, man. I'm taking TJ Watt, defensive player of the year so far.
And his run defense is amazing. I mean, he has more PFF defensive stops than any other edge
2 forced fumbles in there.
Yeah, than any other edge rusher in the NFL. He's got 2 more of those than anybody else. His run defense grade is 93.2.
That's another part of, look, we care about every single play. He used to be like a 70-75 run defender type of PFF guy. He's playing better against the run this year than he ever has.
Khalil Mack has always been a great run defender. Max Crosby is typically one of the best in the NFL. Khalil Mack is number 2, but Watt is the number 1 run defender amongst all edge rushers.
So give me TJ Watt. Get that on the record, Steelers fans. Halfway through the season, TJ Watt, defensive player of the year. Biggest disappointment so far this season?
Every single thing about the Jets. Just as an institution, I am, for the purposes of this award, Mike Greenberg. The Jets have let myself, you, my PrizePicks lineup, themselves.
Pull out a speech.
And everybody else.
Do it off the cuff.
They've let them down.
Give me a speech.
I'm done now. That's it. I'm out. I don't care enough about it.
I have a dream, or just add something to it.
No, I don't care enough about it.
Ask not what the Jets can do for you, but what you can do for the Jets. Fireman Ed.
Whereas the Brits were going to fight them on the beaches and everywhere else, the Jets are fighting them nowhere.
What do you think Churchill would say about this iteration of the Jets?
This sucks. Get me out of here. Winston Churchill.
Show me a team that lets the quarterback pick the coaches. Show me a team that's 2-6.
Well, look, they're still making moves. Greg Zuerlein to IR. They've signed more kickers. Everything's going to turn around now.
Show me a team where the quarterback has more influence than the head coach and the offensive coordinator. Show me a team that's going to win 25% of their games. Churchill. He warned us about this.
4 score and 7 weeks ago, we made a trade for.
It was literally 0 score in 7 weeks ago.
No, I mean when they first traded for Aaron Rodgers, that's probably around 4 score in 7 weeks.
87 years.
Weeks. It's probably 87
weeks. 4
weeks.
scores of. Oh yeah, you're probably right.
Right.
That's good. That's good.
Anywho, you?
I had the Gettysburg Address memorized 1 week.
Yeah.
In 8th grade. Then it was poof out of my brain.
Nice. Well done.
Had to have it memorized. I'll take the hometown Bengals. I mean, the Jets, institutionally, yes.
Yeah.
But again, I don't want to repeat everything you're saying. The Bengals, my Super Bowl pick for the AFC, have been massively disappointing.
They have.
For the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, it was like, what record could the Bengals break? Only team, I mean, the Jets are doing that too, right?
Right.
You know, the one loss in like 800 games with but the Bengals were doing that type of stuff. Only time where you didn't punt and you didn't turn it over and you still lost. Only time a team gave up like 175 passing yards per game in the first 2 weeks of the season, and they were 0-2. They broke records for futility, just like the Jets are. Cincinnati's defense has been a massive disappointment. So, Bengals, biggest disappointment for me, behind the entire institute of the Jets.
Yeah. You would probably also have to throw in, on an individual basis, Bryce Young, who, expectations coming into the season were step forward. Do we get, is he going to be good this year? And no, he was a catastrophe, even worse than last year, benched. And then Deshaun Watson. If he can just play average football, the Browns are a contender. He couldn't even play average football. In fact, he was playing the worst football of any quarterback that's ever led an NFL offense, according to the late, great Austin Gale, right? That's how bad of a disappointment he was.
That is
and
bad.
And then his Achilles popped on him because his own Achilles couldn't even take the misery that was being inflicted upon it, and it just tapped out of the game.
Yeah, it's one of the worst seasons of all time, given the circumstances.
Anthony Richardson, Deshaun Watson's Achilles, handshake emoji. Tapping out of games.
Out. And the Cowboys, as a general disappointment. I'll talk about them later, though. The Dwight Stephenson Award, again, a PFF award that we started years ago at PFF to push back upon the MVP award, that in our disdain for the word valuable in MVP, who's simply the best player in the NFL, regardless of position. That's what the Dwight Stephenson Award is, and we vowed to continue to push the Stephenson Award no matter where we are. So who would you pick at this point in the season?
So Fred Warner as my defensive player of the year would be one of the guys in the running. Creed Humphrey, I think, on offense has been insane for the Chiefs at center. Derrick Henry I would throw in there as well as my offensive player of the year winner. I would probably lean Fred Warner still as just the best player in football this year.
If we're choosing this award right now, 8 weeks into the season, we're not projecting. This is all in hindsight. We're 8 weeks into the year, and who is the Stephenson Award winner? It's Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson of the Lions.
Okay.
If we were handing out the award right now, it's Aiden Hutchinson, who's one pressure off the NFL lead, despite missing the last 2 games, missing the half game in which he got hurt, and also having a bye at this point. And I know he hasn't played any good right tackles. Yeah, he just hasn't played any good tackles.
Not good right tackles. I mean, he's played.
Yeah, he's faced a lot of 3rd and 4th stringers.
Yeah, he's faced a remarkable run of guys that don't belong in this league.
I always come back to, and one of the big debates we used to have at PFF was, do you adjust for competition, right? Should you adjust the grades when they play Joe Thomas at tackle versus, this 3rd stringer? And we always voted no. Like, well, you do that mentally after, as you're doing, right? We say Aiden Hutchinson had a dominant 95 PFF grade through 8 weeks. However, you adjust for competition a little bit mentally, right? It was easy. However, I would say when you go have 17 pressures against the Seahawks, rushing the passer 70 times, when you have those 10 pressure games, of which he had, 4, you're taking advantage of the mismatch. You're creating the mismatch. There's a ton of value in doing that and saying, I'm going to make sure that I dominate this matchup, and it's going to help our pass defense. Obviously, it's going to help us. And he has done it without a lot of help when he's been healthy. So Aiden Hutchinson, trusting all of the production grades that PFF puts out, saying, I think he would be the Stephenson Award winner right now if we were handing it out through 8 weeks.
My question would simply be, how hard is that? There's absolutely value in racking up 15 pressures against somebody that doesn't belong in the league, but would you not expect every one of these top-tier pass rushers to do the same thing? If TJ Watt faced his slate, what would his production be? If Nick Bosa faced that slate, what would his production be? Like, I would expect all of these elite edge rushers
maybe
to put up comparable numbers facing the type of competition that Aiden Hutchinson faced.
Well, we don't have the counterfactual, as you would say. So
correct.
I'm giving credit to the factual, which is Aiden Hutchinson.
Okay.
A Dwight Stephenson Award winner.
So he's your Stephenson Award, but not your Defensive Player of the Year through the first half of the season.
No, because he's hurt now. Because he's hurt.
How does that make any sense?
Because I put a little more. So the Stephenson Award, I put less on the value aspect of things, and I leaned into the value aspect of things with Watt playing more and then making the key plays at the right time. I valued that more in my Defensive Player of the Year discussion rather than my who's just been the best player.
This is the first time it's occurred to you that didn't make any sense.
No, I gave you the explanation of where I was.
Got it.
I just saw T.J. Watt strip sack and recovery trifecta on Monday Night Football, and that influenced my DPOY.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. That's fine.
All right, MVP, your favorite. Who's the MVP?
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I'd have no problem with Lamar. I would be interested if the voting did happen right now because they're 5-3, and the voters are. I mean, it's become like Heisman voters.
Coming off a loss.
He's coming off a loss. It's the last thing we saw, but he was like so far ahead in the perceived MVP race before that game, and they didn't lose it because of the offense necessarily.
And it's also so stupid because everybody is always going to have a couple of those games. The question is, when did they happen, right? So Jared Goff, people are going to be like, Jared Goff's MVP right now. Jared Goff played like crap for the first 2 weeks of the season, but they were the first 2 weeks, and nobody remembers that anymore, right? If Jared Goff had like his bad game last week, we'd be like, there goes his MVP candidacy out the window.
He also has a ton of hidden fumbles that have not mattered whatsoever.
Yeah,
if those just became interceptions or whatever, it would change perception.
But simply order. Like if you just moved his 2 bad games
don't even get
anywhere randomly in like mid-game and then last week, nobody would even be mentioning him for MVP.
2021, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady had the exact same game against the Saints, but Brady's happened in week 15 or whatever, and Rodgers was week 1, and people were like, I don't even what? Week 1?
Yeah.
That doesn't count. That didn't even happen this season.
Right. That just always I find funny that
I agree.
When you have these games, not even like key moments or crunch time or opposition, it's just like simply random distribution. When they came in the season is going to dictate whether people remember them enough to count them against the player or not.
The interesting thing about Lamar, or even a Mahomes, who I don't think is anywhere in this discussion right now, but there is this idea of you're just perpetually valuable, and no matter what you do, there's this elevating of the team. So I think the case for Lamar is stronger this year than last year, where he became this hands down, well, it's got to be Lamar. He had great games the last 3 weeks of the season when it mattered. But you see Derrick Henry come in, and all of a sudden, he's putting up Offensive Player of the Year type of numbers. There's inherently value coming from Lamar that is rubbing off on Derrick Henry. I think you feel that more this year, where the Ravens' defense is not as stout as it's been. They've been rough on that side of the ball from a pass defense perspective. Good against the run, not great against the pass. Lamar, I think, has a stronger case this year as a 5-3 team, not a 14-3 team. And I think he's played better overall to this point in the season.
Well, also, so like Aaron Donald, I think it's very easy to simply forget that he affects every game on every play simply by being there, right? It gets very easy to sort of forget how much teams have to think about it's Lamar Jackson. If one of the reasons I think that Barry Sanders is the greatest running back that's ever played is that people talk about him, players that had to play him, and coaches. Bill Belichick does this. When you hear them talk about we're playing Barry Sanders this week, the panic and like focus on just make sure we don't screw up any play, because if we do, he's gone, touchdown, right? That has value. That has immense value. And that's why those guys are different. Like nobody ever talked about Emmitt Smith in that way, right? They were like vague contemporaries a year apart or whatever in the draft. 2 guys at the top, putting up insane numbers. Nobody ever spoke in those terms about Emmitt Smith. But every player you hear talk about Barry Sanders speaks about him in those terms. That's how people focus on Aaron Donald. That's how people think about Lamar Jackson as well. Nobody's thinking that way about Jared Goff. Nobody's coming into a game going, whatever you do, don't switch off and cover 2 because Goff's going to touchdown. They're just not.
I like Jared Goff a lot. When I look at the Lions, I'm like, I love every receiver, every tight end, every running back. their offensive line, their special teams just scored 40 points or something on Sunday. I mean, the whole team is just outstanding.
But that's an inherent value that he brings to the table. I think it's very easy to just forget about randomly in a season where you're like, oh, look, these two guys have similar stats. Let's go with the other guy. Like, yeah, but the other guy's not affecting it the same way.
And I would say generally Mahomes has that same ability.
Yeah.
But when you really watch the Chiefs this year, you're like, man, the defense has saved them a ton. It's a defense-first team. Mahomes has had a ton of key plays at the end. He's played far better in the fourth quarter than he has in the first three, but certainly not playing at his normal level.
Both of us wanted to at least shout out Jaden Daniels.
So he's actually my pick. So
he's your pick?
Yeah, like I put Lamar into the chat initially, and then I'm rethinking it, and so now I'm doing the thing where I'm saying I would take Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
Let's discuss.
And this is only a couple of weeks after sort of scoffing at that as a notion.
I didn't scoff.
People were bringing up Jaden Daniels MVP after like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. You're like, come on, let's tap the brakes a little bit. But
I have a history of like, let's tap the brakes, give me more evidence, and then I'll come around to it. I think like in 2015 when Cam Newton was playing, I didn't think he was playing at an MVP level. That was his MVP season. And then he played more, and I got more evidence, and I'm like, yeah, he's playing at an MVP caliber level. I'm there.
Still would have given it to Carson Palmer.
Still, Carson Palmer was so good that year. Honestly, Brady could have won it that year too. Everybody got hurt around him. Jaden Daniels, and I'm going to bring it up. I wanted to bring this up from this perspective. Similar to the Texans last year, we said, hey, C.J. Stroud's going to Houston, and I don't know about his pass catchers, and Bobby's a first-time play caller, and this and that, and he was outstanding, and Stroud probably deserves the most credit there.
Right.
But you also had a Bobby Slowick coming from the Shanahan tree, and the Shanahan scheme was the thing that was beating the NFL. So you had that advantage. Jaden Daniels seemingly went to Washington with none of those advantages. We had Cliff Kingsbury coming back from Thailand or whatever with like a history of, a couple good years with Kyler Murray, but like a stale scheme.
Yeah, with an offense that was like a concern.
Yes.
Like, can this offense even function in the NFL still? And
then you look at Jahan Dotson was supposed to be their number 2 receiver, and they traded him before the year, and we're like, yeah, De'Ami Brown's good enough. And so it's Terry McLaurin as a true number 1, a bunch of questions at receiver, an aging tight end in Zach Ertz, like questionable offensive line. We were sitting there in draft night saying, when are they going to draft an offensive lineman? They waited till late round 3. And so nothing around Jaden Daniels was supposed to be great. And this offense is historically good so far to this point. And he deserves the most credit. I cannot be more impressed with Jaden Daniels, even if they were 5-3 and that Hail Mary didn't hit, which was pure luck. That has nothing to do with Jaden Daniels' legend. The legend is the fact that he's had incredible efficiency throwing the ball. When he's not throwing the ball, he's saving incompletions by scrambling and picking up positive yards. He's a designed run game weapon. One of the best scramblers in the NFL, if not the best right now. And the accuracy and decision-making has been unbelievable so far for Jaden Daniels. And the entire team that has not been good in forever has been elevated in Washington, and they're sitting there in first place. So Dan Quinn deserves some credit, but I would say Jaden Daniels probably deserves more credit for elevating Washington than, say, C.J. Stroud deserved for elevating Houston last year, even though I think it's a similar type of situation.
Yeah, and to me, the most impressive thing has been, again, he's had an answer for everything that's been thrown his way. He hasn't just been getting by with a sort of one-trick style that hasn't yet been found out. Every different team he's faced almost has come up with a completely different way of trying to slow him down, trying to knock him off his game, and every single time he's cleared the hurdle, right? Whether they're going to blitz the crap out of him, whether they're going to drop 8 all game, whether he actually needs a play at a key time to come up with, 0 blitz, boom, touchdown to McLaurin for the game against the Bengals. Like every single time he's had to find something, he's found it. And every single time he's been challenged in a new way, he's risen to that challenge. It's been really, really impressive.
So I'm right. I'd say Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson for me, right up there in the MVP conversation.
All right.
How about the biggest storylines now heading into the second half of the season, Sam?
So I think the first one of them is whether the Vikings can maintain this kind of crazy run that they've been on. They've wobbled a couple of times now, 2 straight defeats. Can they right the ship? Will they stay as a really good team, or do they eventually fade and fall off? On both sides of the ball, like Darnold going back into a pumpkin, Flores defense, as we saw last year, just running out of steam, and there were signs of that against the Rams. Where are the Vikings going to go going forward? And then the other thing I think is these teams that are dead and buried but actually talented, are any of those teams probably not get themselves back into the playoffs, but just go on the kind of run that ruins everybody else's season. Like, can the Bengals put it together and go on that run? And even if they come up short of the postseason, just ruin a bunch of other teams' years, right? By beating them and knocking off really good teams. Cleveland, now with Jameis, can they go on the kind of run where they look like a playoff team but have left it too late? Miami, now with Tua, they flipped the switch. The offense is different. Can they ruin a bunch of team seasons by going on a run and beating teams? So those dead and buried teams that now become live nightmare, dangerous opponents for everybody.
Yeah, I think those are all fun, good to watch. You're waiting for an exploding whale. Cincinnati's the exploding whale this year, huh?
Unless they put it together, they could just become good for a period, but too late.
Yeah.
If they only did it once, then yeah.
For me, the two storylines, Dallas, who I mentioned in the biggest disappointment discussion, just watching them every week and how that unfolds. You know, do they even make any semblance of a playoff run? Or is it clear as day this whole thing needs to get, turned over this offseason with Mike McCarthy and add more players to the mix? All of the offseason failures, so to speak, in Dallas came back to bite, seemingly, unless they turn it around in the second half. And then the MVP that I was talking about, Jaden Daniels, just in the second half, right? I mean, Look, we said this coming into this year. Last year's 8 to 10 game stretch of Jordan Love was outstanding, but we've seen 8 to 10 game stretches of great play from quarterbacks before. The NFL plays defense differently. They adjust. They get film on you. They change things. How can you adjust? We've seen Patrick Mahomes completely change his game from downfield gunslinger to probably the most conservative dink and dunk quarterback in the NFL. How do you adjust your game if needed? So the Jaden Daniels development for me, the entire second half of the season, and just the Commanders generally, are they for real? 6-2 from a team that hasn't been good for years, and they look completely different this year in a division, mind you, where they easily should have been behind Dallas and Philly when it comes to talent coming into this year, and they still might be. Like, where do the Commanders rank in talent in that division?
Right.
Not higher than third, I don't think. Can they maintain it? And, oh, by the way, they have to play Dallas twice. They have to play Philly twice. So I can't wait to see all of those matchups, how the Cowboys respond in the second half, how Jaden Daniels and the Commanders respond in the second half.
The last thing I think that'll be a funny story to monitor, when the Browns were steadfastly refusing to give up on Deshaun Watson, it's like, look at what the schedule is. This could get amazing. Like, how bad this could get is going to be fascinating. And obviously, his Achilles tapping out ended that story. The Jets, though. The Jets are 2-6?
2-6.
2-6. They've already fired the head coach. Nothing else is working. We trade for Davante Adams. We now put the kicker on IR. Like, we're running out of things that can change any of this, right?
How bad can it get?
Yes. How bad can this get for the Jets? Like, if they don't pull themselves out of this tailspin, and like they're close, not necessarily close to being good, but like they're close to winning all of these games, right? So it's not like they're getting blown out every week and it's like they have no shot of winning ever. But if this continues, I'm just fascinated. Like, what is Mr. Thinking is Overrated owner going to do if they just keep stacking L's one after another? What is the Rodgers interview going to look like when they have 4 more losses on the bounce? What is Davante Adams going to be like after 4 more of these? If the Jets continue to lose, it's going to be one of the most compelling stories of the NFL.
I mean,
to just like gawk at this car crash as you drive by.
You're into all the dumpster fires,
yeah.
Basically. Following the dumpster fires.
Well, because normally you never get that, right? Teams change. They do something. They snap themselves out of it. They make a move.
Oh, they're changing.
And there's no longer, like, you avert the dumpster fire. The Jets are locked into this. They are all in, right? It's like you've pushed all your chips into the middle with what you think is a great hand, and when the cards start turning over, like, every card makes it worse. You know, every card simply reduces your chances of winning the hand, despite your car, your loan, your mortgage, everything sitting in the middle of the table, and you just have to watch as card by card comes over, and you get nothing out of it.
The Jets don't play a team with a losing record until December 8th. So they get the Texans this week, then the 4-4 Cardinals, the 4-4 Colts, the 4-4 Seahawks. So, all games that are winnable or losable.
Mm-hmm.
And then they play the Dolphins. They still have to play the Dolphins twice. The Dolphins have a losing record, but they have Tua back, presumably. The Rams later in the season, they're kind of a losing team because of their injuries. Like, most of the games are tough. Get the Bills again. So, yeah, dumpster fire watch.
Yep. How bad can it get
for the Jets? It's going to be an exciting second half. All right, let's reset our postseason predictions. Do you remember what your Super Bowl prediction was?
I do, in large part because I asked somebody to check. So Will in the chat, not the chat, our production chat, checked for me, and it was what I thought it was, but he verified.
Okay. And what was it?
It was a Super Bowl between the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, still very much alive.
And I had Detroit winning that. So I'm sticking with it.
So you're going to stick with it.
I have no reason. Currently, if you ask a lot of people, I think those would probably be talked about as the two best teams in football right now. So I feel like that's solid.
Did we hit on Ari's breaking news here that the Jets have placed Greg Zuerlein on IR?
2 or 3 times, yeah.
You mentioned that already?
Yeah.
The IR aspect?
Yes.
I didn't hear that. Mm-hmm. It is my brain immediately checks out during the kicker discussion.
Yeah. You, Deshaun Watson's Achilles, Anthony Richardson, it's all tapping out.
It's all tapping out, yes. So my initial Super Bowl prediction just 9 weeks ago was Eagles-Bengals, which we saw last week.
We did.
Wouldn't have been a great Super Bowl. For 3 quarters it
might have been.
Yeah.
Just it's not going to happen.
It might still, but I will reset.
Mathematically alive.
I will reset to Detroit Lions.
Okay.
And the Buffalo Bills.
Oh.
For the fun. I mean, Lions-Bills Super Bowl, like some really sad fan base is going to be real happy unless it's a tie somehow. I mean, that would be so – how fun would that be down in Nolans? Lions and Bills. I'm rooting for fun for the fans.
I mean,
for Bills fans and for Lions fans.
Yeah, like as a neutral, it would be nice to see a Super Bowl between two teams that haven't won one.
Yeah, that's what I'm predicting.
Do the Lions count because they won championships, right?
No.
NFL championships.
Listen, NFL
it has to be in the Super Bowl era. We don't
NFL
count anything
history
that happened before 1960 something.
NFL history pre-1970
doesn't exist.
Is already iffy.
What do you mean iffy? You're telling me there's like
iffy.
Debate about whether the game happened?
The game has changed so much.
Right.
There's no Lions fans who are just oh man, that 60 team was just outstanding.
You're telling me it's changed that much?
People who are like, man, Otto Graham deserves more credit. You know, everybody's sleeping on Otto Graham. Yeah, you tell me about Otto Graham and his game when he played in all those Browns championships.
How's that different to Bart Starr? We count his because they were in the Super Bowl era, so that's okay.
Late 60s. Merger.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You're telling me the merger is the thing that makes it modern. Before that, it's a joke.
Super Bowl.
It's black and white.
Yeah.
It didn't even happen. After the Super Bowl, though, it's all fine.
Yeah. Baseball has a rich enough history that you can, talk about Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams and everything.
But Buffalo have never made.
Football's top 100 had 70 guys you've never heard of.
Look, just because you are happy to overlook the career of the great Beatty Feathers doesn't mean the rest of us. But because the Browns have won championships, right? And the Lions have won championships. So but the Bills have never won. How many franchises have literally never won any championship of any description, whether or not it was before or after the merger?
Bills, Jags, and Panthers.
Bills, Jags, and Panthers. Texans.
Bills in the expansion teams.
Yeah.
The new Browns.
Cardinals have won a championship, right? Didn't they win one in 1925 or something stupid?
I'm sure they did. It was legendary.
Chicago Cardinals. Maybe not even that. I don't know. Anyway, I think the Cardinals have won a championship.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them.
So give me Lions, Bills.
Okay.
And I'll take the Lions to win. So we're both picking the Lions to win the Super Bowl here. Walt, do you have any info on the Browns and Lions of the 50s and 60s?
Probably saw it live.
That's what I'm saying. That's why he's in the chat. He's probably retired. Hanging out with us. He likes to throw back to 70s references. That's all.
Right.
Anyway. So that's it. That's our second half preview. A lot of fun.
We out. Second half preview.
Predictions? That was our what did we just do?
You really just checked out, huh? Just straight out of the show.
You don't realize what it's like as the host. Making sure we stay on schedule, of which we were behind by about 25 minutes today.
Yeah.
Making sure we hit everything in a row. Read the ads at the right time. You think I can't hear? I can't be perfect. Listen to everything you're saying.
To what's
you're
happening.
talking kickers. I'm over here like, what's the rundown? What's the next thing we're doing?
Yeah.
You know? It's my favorite show of the week. It's the Wednesday show. And we just recapped the first half of the NFL season and previewed some of the second half with some predictions. That's what we just did. Oh, man. I appreciate everybody who tunes in to this every single week. It's great. Tomorrow, Week 9 preview show right here live at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. As always, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe on the way out. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow with more Check the Mic.